The shrewd Khalid seized this golden opportunity to turn swiftly round to the rear of the Muslim army and encompass them. Exterminating Ibn Jubair and his group, they fell promptly upon the rear of the Muslims, and his horsemen uttered a shout that signaled the new military developments. The polytheists returned once again to counterattack the Muslims. An idolist woman called Umrah rushed to the lying on earth standard, picked it up, and hoisted it. The idolaters gathered together around the standard and called out onto one another till they encircled the Muslims and stood fast to fight again. The Muslims consequently got entrapped between two milestones. The Messenger of Allah was then among a small group of fighters, 9 in number, at the rear of the army, watching the engagement and braving the Muslim fighters. Khalid and his men took up by utter surprise and obliged him to follow either of two options: to flee for his life and abandon his army to its doomed end, or to take action at the risk of his life, rally the ranks of the Muslims again and work their way through the hills of Uhud towards the encompassed army. The genius of the Messenger of Allah, his peerless and matchless courage, made him opt for the second course. He raised his voice, calling out unto his companions, slaves of Allah. He did that though he knew that his loud voice would be heard by the idolaters before it was heard by the Muslims. He called out unto them, risking his life in this delicate situation. The idolaters indeed recognized him and reached his position even before the other Muslims could do so. The encompassment of the Muslims revealed three categories of people. The first group were those who were only interested in themselves, and they went so mad that they fled. They left the battlefield and did not know what happened to the others. Some of this group fled as far as Medina. Some others went up the mountain. The second Muslim group were those who returned to the battle, but mixed with the idolaters in such a way that they could not recognize one another. Consequently, some of them were killed by mistake. On the authority of al-Bukhari, he states that Aisha said, when it was Uhud battle, the idolaters were utterly defeated. Satan then called out, O slaves of Allah, beware the rear. The enemy is approaching from behind. So those who were at the front turned back and fought the ones who were behind. Then Hudayfa caught sight of his father, Al-Yaman, about to be killed by other Muslims. So he said, O servants of Allah, beware, this is my father, this is my father. Aisha said, but they did not part with him till he was killed. Hudayfa then said, may Allah forgive you, and Urwa said, by Allah, from that time on Hudayfa has always been blessed and wealthy till he died. That was because he forgave them and refused to take any blood money for his father's murder, but recommended that it be spent in charity. This Muslim group suffered from great bewilderment, and disorder prevailed among them. A lot of them got lost and did not know where to go. At this awkward time they heard something calling, Muhammad is killed. This news made them even more bewildered and almost out of sense. Their morale broke down, or almost did, in a great number of individuals. Some of them stopped fighting, slackened and cast down their weapons. Others thought of getting in touch with Abdullah bin Ubay. the head of the hypocrites, and seeking his assistance to fetch them a security pledge from Abu Sufyan, passed by those people who were shuddering of fear and panic, and inquired, "What are you waiting for?" They said, "The Messenger of Allah has been killed. What do you live for after Muhammad? Come on and die for what the Messenger of Allah has died for." Then he said, "O Allah, I apologize for what these people, the Muslims, have done, and I swear disavowal of what the idolaters have perpetrated." Then he moved on till he was encountered by Sa'd, who asked him, "Where to, Abu Umar?" Anas replied, "How fine the scent of the paradise is. I smell it here in Uhud." He went on and fought against the idolaters till he was killed. Nobody but his sister could recognize his body. It had been cut and stabbed by over 80 swords, arrows, or spears. It was by the tip of his finger that she, after the battle, recognized him, called on to his people, saying, "O kinfolk of helpers, if Muhammad were killed, Allah is everlasting and he never dies. Fight in defense of your faith. Allah will help you, and so you will be victorious." A group of helpers joined him and all set out and attacked a battalion of Khalid's horsemen. He kept on fighting till he and his friends were killed. An immigrant passed by a helper who was besmeared by blood. He said, "O fellow, have you heard of Muhammad's murder?" The helper answered, "If Muhammad were killed, then he must have completed the delivery of the message. So fight in defense of your religion." With such boldness and encouragement, the Muslims soon recovered. Their spirits came round to senses and desisted the idea of surrender or contacting the hypocrite. They took up arms and resumed the fight, attempting to make way to the headquarters, particularly after the news of the Prophet's death had been falsified. The glad tidings nerved them and helped them to manage quite successfully the break of the military blockade and concentrate their forces in an immune place to resume a relentless and fierce fight against the polytheists. The third group of Muslims were those who cared for nothing except the Prophet. At the head of them were notable companions like Abu Bakr, Umar bin al-Khattab, Ali bin Abi Talib, and others, who hastened to protect the Prophet through unrivaled devotion. As those groups of Muslims were receiving the blows of the idolaters and resisting instantly, the fight flared up around the Messenger of Allah, who had only 9 people around him. We have already mentioned that when the idolaters started their encompassment, there were only 9 persons around the Messenger of Allah, and that as soon as he called out unto the Muslims, "Come on, I am the Messenger of Allah," the idolaters heard his voice and recognized him, so they turned back and attacked him with all their power before any of his companions ran to his aid. A violent raging struggle broke out between the 9 Muslims and the idolaters, during which fearless sort of love, self-sacrifice, bravery, and heroism were revealed. Muslim, on the authority of Anas bin Malik, narrated that the Messenger of Allah, along with 7 helpers and 2 immigrants, was confined to a trap. When the idolaters attacked him, the Messenger of Allah said, "He who pushes back those idolaters will be housed in paradise, or he will be my companion in paradise." One of the helpers stepped forward and fought the idolaters in defense of the Prophet till he was killed. Then they attacked the Messenger again. The same process was repeated again and again till all the 7 helpers were killed. Then the Messenger of Allah said to his 2 Qurayshite companions, "We have not done justice to our companions." The last of those 7 helpers was Amara who kept on fighting till his wounds neutralized him and he fell dead. The most awkward hour in the Messenger's life, after the fall of Ibn Sakam, the Messenger of Allah remained alone with only those two Qurayshites in a version by Abu Uthman, authorized in As-Sahihain. He said, at that time there were none with the Prophet except Talha bin Ubaidullah and Sa'd. That was the most awkward and dangerous hour for the Prophet. But it was a golden opportunity for the idolaters, who promptly took advantage of it. They concentrated their attack on the Prophet and looked forward to killing him.